What's up, guys? It's Ben with 2020 election predictions, and today I'm going to be doing an updated Senate video. I haven't done one in over a month, and a lot has changed. Some states I think have flipped from like leaning to a candidate to being toss-ups or tilting to a toss-up, and some have even changed form right to the other side. And before I dive into that, I just want to remind y'all, everyone who's watching this video, please subscribe. I think only about 30% of my viewers are subscribing. Road to 1,000. I'm going to do a huge giveaway once I get to 1,000 subscribers and become monetized. All right, so just diving right in, here are the states where I see them now. I mean, these safe red states and safe blue states, I don't think anyone would challenge me on these. Kansas right now just has as a likely because I think Chris Kobach could win the nomination, and I would throw this into flux, maybe even make it a lean R or tilt R. In Mississippi, Senator Hyde-Smith, in her special reelection bid, I think she only won by about 5 points. With President Trump on the ballot, this is going to help, but especially with all this energy in the Black Lives Matter movement, Mississippi does have a large Black population. She could maybe only win this by about 5 to 10 points. And then similar with Alaska, Alaska has demonstrated that it can have some Democratic spurts. I do think that the incumbent Republican will win, but I definitely think that we should look at Alaska, and typically no one pays attention to it because the results come in about 2 a.m. Eastern. But I think this is going to be a lot closer than people expect. Then going to the Democratic state, New Mexico, I think the polls have it about as plus 12 to plus 15. I have it in the likely not safe just because New Mexico has demonstrated that it's not completely a safe blue state. Minnesota, I think Donald Trump will outperform the Republican challenger. And in New Mexico, the challenger, Corker, he doesn't have as much name recognition as Cory Lewandowski. He was thinking about trying to flip New Hampshire, but I still think New Hampshire, the incumbent Democrat, won't have a ton of it won't be hard for them to keep the seat. So anyway, moving right in, let's go to the likely Republican seats. I already filled in 3 of them. But I do think that Alabama will be a likely Republican seat. Some people have this only as a lean Republican because the incumbent is a Democrat, Doug Jones. I think Tommy Tuberville will not have that much difficulty winning over the seat just because Alabama is a very safe red seat, and that 2017 special election was very, very special. And Alabama tends to be more Republican than Mississippi and Georgia and even South Carolina. So I think the former Auburn coach will be able to win this seat just because Doug Jones has not demonstrated that he's able to cross the aisle as much as someone like Joe Manchin in West Virginia. Doug Jones voted against Kavanaugh, and the people of Alabama are going to punish him for that, I believe. Next up, moving to Kentucky, I think this is pretty interesting. There was a pretty hotly contested Democratic Senate primary here recently. Amy McGrath ended up winning, though, and she's going to take on Mitch McConnell. I think she's definitely a better candidate for the Democrats. She's more moderate. And because I don't think anyone would support a Senate candidate who supports the Green New Deal, Medicare for all. I mean, those are things that the people in Kentucky don't want. However, a lot of outside money is going to be poured into Kentucky, and I would consider this as a safe seat, but Mitch McConnell is kind of seen as the boogeyman on the left, and even some Republicans don't really like him. Kentucky does have a Democratic governor. With President Trump on the ballot and him vocally supporting Mitch McConnell, I think he'll be able to keep the seat. But this is just something to keep an eye out on, and the RNC might have to put money into the state where they would like to put it elsewhere. Next up, pretty similar, South Carolina, I consider this as a likely Republican state. Some of these polls have it as kind of a tie within the margin of error. I do think Lindsey Graham will be able to ride President Trump's coattails. There have been some rumblings on Twitter about Lindsey Graham being gay. I think he definitely could be gay, but he's not going to come out. And something with male prostitutes, I don't know if this is true. I kind of doubt the truthfulness of the male prostitute stuff, but if it comes out that that is true, I definitely think that this race could be like a pure toss-up just because the whole weirdness of the race. So next up, going to the likely Democratic states, already filled in 3 over here. But I definitely think Colorado will be a likely Democratic state. And I think it's similar to Alabama in that Cory Gardner is a very vulnerable sitting Republican senator. He is the incumbent, but he barely won this race in 2014 off the skin of his teeth. Running against a very vulnerable Democrat in 2014. John Hickenlooper, who was a former 2020 presidential candidate, I think will be a strong candidate. He has had a little bit of trouble coming through the primary, but I just think that Cory Gardner is a very, very vulnerable senator. His approval ratings in Colorado are not very high, and he hasn't demonstrated that he's like as moderate as someone like Susan Collins. Like I think Susan Collins has a lot better chance of keeping her seat than Cory Gardner, even though on the presidential level, Maine and Colorado are pretty linked in terms of like their margins that they vote for Democrats. They're definitely blue states. I would consider them. So next up, going to the lean Republican states. I actually think that Georgia at large is going to be a lean Republican state. I had this in my likely Republican states earlier just because I think David Perdue is a pretty popular incumbent senator, but Georgia increasingly is becoming a swing state. Some models even have Biden ahead in Georgia. While I do think President Trump will be able to win this state, and I do think that David Perdue will outperform President Trump, I do think David Perdue will probably only win this state between 2 and 5 points, which is how I've characterized the lean characterization. So Georgia will be a state that we will be looking at in the future, and this might be David Perdue. Purdue's last term, depending on what the political winds are like in 2026, Georgia's going to be a pure toss-up in 2024, 2026. The special election, it's going to be pretty weird. I consider this as a lean Republican state too. It's going to be really weird to see if like Doug Collins, Kelly Loeffler, who comes on top. I predict it'll be Doug Collins just because Kelly Loeffler, with her insider trading scandal, and she was never nationally elected. She was appointed by Governor Brian Kemp, kind of in the nose of President Trump in the White House. They really did not like Kelly Loeffler. It was an effort to reach out to kind of the suburban female vote, but it kind of backfired. However, so if no one gets a majority, which I think is likely, I do not think that the Democrat will get a majority, and definitely not Doug Collins or Kelly Loeffler because they're probably going to split the vote. Doug Collins presumably is going to go up against the Democrat, which is still unclear at this point who that's going to be after the election. So if Biden wins, I think there'll be a lot of Republican energy to hold this Senate seat. So I still characterize this as a lean Republican state, even though there's a lot less certainty. And then next up, going to the state of Texas. Texas, like Georgia, is increasingly becoming a swing state. Texas is still a little bit more of a Republican stronghold, I think. But in 2018, we saw that it can be a lot closer. I mean, Ted Cruz, although he's like vilified by the left a lot, he's a pretty prominent senator and came within 1.5 percentage points of losing this seat. I do think John Cornyn will be able to have a greater margin of victory than Ted Cruz, just because it will be in a presidential election year. And I don't think John Cornyn actually has a lot of the baggage that Ted Cruz has. But still, I mean, there have been some polls coming out of this that have it a little closer than it could be. I think the state could be a likely Republican state too. I think John Cornyn will win the state by around like 5 to 6 points or 4 to 6 points. So I'm splitting hairs just between likely or lean Republican. Next up, we're going to the lean Democratic states. At this point in the race, I do think that Arizona is a lean Democratic state. I just saw one poll that had Martha McSally in the lead by 4 points, but it was done by One American News Network and Gravis, and is frankly the only poll that I've seen Martha McSally above water in. I've seen a lot more polls where Mark Kelly is up by 10 plus points. And just taking the average of these, I think the Real Clear Politics average has about like +8, +9 for Mark Kelly. I do think this is going to be closer on actual election night. But I mean, we've seen from Republicans that they are very, 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 very worried about the Arizona Senate seat. Martha McSally was obviously appointed. She had this really weird like bill in the Senate where she wanted to like pay people to go on vacation, and it was vilified on the left and the right. They kind of saw it as a handout, which I kind of did too. I think she's getting a little bit desperate. But I do think she's going to try to ride President Trump's coattails hard. And like right now on the presidential level, I still see Arizona as a pure toss-up, but on the Senate level, I see it as leaning towards the Democrats, and this is not good news for President Trump. Next up is the state of Michigan. The Republicans do have a very, very strong candidate in John James. I think he's going to be a Republican superstar in the future. But I do think President Trump is hurting him a little bit right now. If it were 2016 and John James was on the ballot, John James wins. He is the second Black Republican senator, and I think he would be a Republican superstar because Republican senators Ron Johnson in Wisconsin and Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania, they both won their seats, and there was no split ticket voting in 2016 in terms of there's a different party for the Senate candidate and the presidential candidate. On the presidential level, I have Michigan leaning towards the Democrats, and I think it will be pretty similar on the Senate level as well. I do think John James has the potential to outperform President Trump, but I think they'll be pretty close in tandem. And there's not going to be a lot of people who vote for John James and Joe Biden, even though there might be a few. All right, so next up, I'm going to the tilt states. And before I get to that, I just want to remind you, please subscribe. I'm almost at 800. Let's get to 1,000. Road to 1,000. Hit the subscribe button just like right here on the video and click the bell notifications. All right, so right now we're at 48. Oh my gosh, we're at 48 to, oh man, 48 to 48. Okay, I'm sorry about this, guys. So we have 4 states outstanding. So let's first go to the tilt Republican states. I think that Iowa is going to be a tilt Republican. At first, I had this as a lean Republican state just because I do think Donald Trump has shifted the state towards the Republicans, and I think Joni Ernst could ride President Trump's coattails. Iowa is still going to be a state that President Trump wins. I think it's a lean Republican state on the presidential level. However, on the Senate level, I do think Joni Ernst is not as popular as President Trump. I think it's more of a toss-up state. However, I think at the end of the day, there's not going to be a lot of split ticket voting, and partisanship is going to rule the day, and Joni Ernst is going to keep the seat. And I do think the Republicans are going to pour money into the state because it's a state that is going to be competitive on the presidential and Senate level. Next up, going to the tilt Democratic states. I think that Maine will be a tilt Democratic state. At first, kind of like I do think this could still be a toss-up, but just because like people's partisanship is so much, and I've done this video, there's not going to be a lot of split ticket voting. Maine is a blue state, and I think increasingly we will find that there's not going to be a lot of Republican senators in blue states and vice versa, even though right now there are more Democratic senators in red states. Susan Collins has demonstrated that she's Teflon politically in the past, winning consistently by big margins, double-digit margins in Maine. But I think her vote for Brett Kavanaugh is going to be the nail in the coffin. I mean, it was kind of one of those things like damned if she did, damned if she didn't. Because if she had voted against Brett Kavanaugh, I think she would have been primaried, and then her primary challenger would have lost. So I think politically speaking for the Republicans, Susan Collins voting yes for Brett Kavanaugh and running for re-election was their best bet. But I don't know if it will be enough for her to win re-election. I think Brett Kavanaugh's vote in the recent Supreme Court decision in the state of Louisiana, some people saw it as him trying to repeal Roe v. Wade. It's not going to help her, but I think Susan Collins in her campaigning is going to try to distance herself from Kavanaugh and President Trump as much as she can, try to just run it. This is this moderate candidate. Will it work? We will see. But right now, just based on the polling data, I think Susan Collins is a little bit behind, but I think that she could pull the upset just because of her name recognition in the state. So next up, I do think that these let's see. Oh my gosh. Anyway, I do think these last two states are going to be toss-ups. Montana and North Carolina. So right now it's 49-49. I do see Montana on a little bit of the right of North Carolina right now, if we're talking about like a tipping point scale. But the polls in both these states have demonstrated a very competitive matchup. If I had to split hairs here, I would have North Carolina as tilting towards the Democrats. Cal Cunningham has been ahead of the polls, and I think that having a pretty popular incumbent Democratic governor in Roy Cooper, I do think this will help Cal Cunningham a little bit. And I at this point, I really don't know who's going to outperform him, President Trump or Tom Tillis or Joe Biden or Cal Cunningham. I expect President Trump to outperform Tom Tillis a little bit. So this could be like one of the few states where this is a split ticket ballot. However, I mean, it's really, really too close to call now. It'll be interesting to see how the convention moving out of the state, if that affects it at all. But right now, I think that Kyle Cunningham holds a small advantage. And moving on to Montana, this is also just a very, very close state. I have it as a toss-up now. But I think if I had to call it today, it would be a tilt Republican state. Steve Bullock does have a lot of political clout. And I think in any other state that maybe leans slightly to the Democrats, Steve Bullock would be a superstar. But Montana just is a Republican state at the end of the day. In 2018, I was very surprised. John Tester won that state by about 3.5 percentage points. This very, very much surprised me. I had Montana as a Republican pickup in the Senate, so I might get surprised again. But I do think with President Trump on the ballot that it will help Steve Daines against Steve Bullock. But this is my projection right now. And so it's a 50-50 tie, so the vice president would break this tie. Right now, I have Joe Biden winning the election, so the Democrats would regain the Senate in this election prediction. So let me know what you think of this election prediction, and please subscribe here if you haven't.